37,000 tons of ammunition, 1,500 Russian troops, one narrow strip of land between Moldova and Ukraine that was supposed to be Putin's battering ram into the heart of Europe. This is the story of how that plan just got demolished. Listen, when you look at the map, what Putin was trying to do makes brutal sense from a military perspective. Transnistria sits right there, a separatist region controlled by Moscow, positioned perfectly to encircle Odessa from the west. If those Russian forces had moved, they could have squeezed Ukraine's most critical port city in a deadly vice. The Black Sea would have become a Russian lake. Ukraine's economy collapses overnight. Millions of tons of grain rot in silos. The global food supply gets held hostage. This wasn't some fantasy. This was a real, calculated plan. But here's the thing that changes everything. Ukraine just did something that nobody expected. In the last few weeks, Kiev moved an entire operational command to the Transnistria border and built something so comprehensive, so layered, so methodical that it's turned this entire region into an impenetrable fortress. And I mean impenetrable. So what exactly happened here? How did Ukraine transform a vulnerable border into a steel wall? And why does this matter for the entire future of Europe? Stay with me, because once you see what's been built, you understand why Putin's entire strategy just collapsed. The defense line stretches for kilometers. Anti-tank ditches literally split the earth. Dragon's teeth, specially poured concrete obstacles designed to stop armored vehicles, completely lock down every strategic crossing. Minefields stretching as far as the eye can see turn any infiltration attempt into a deadly gamble. Deepened fortifications and underground bunkers provide protected positions that can withstand heavy bombardment. Every single meter is monitored 24/7 with autonomous video surveillance and AI-supported early warning systems. Concertina wire forms a physical steel web. New lateral roads cut through forests for rapid reinforcement between units. This isn't a border. This is a controlled killing zone. The Ukrainian army concentrated forces from the Western Operational Command directly on this line. The Mohale-Podilsky Border Guard Unit controls the area so completely that nothing moves without their knowledge. Additional mechanized units with armored vehicles sit at the 0 point, barrels locked on targets. This is a multi-layered defense system designed with one purpose: stop anything that tries to come from Transnistria. But here's where it gets interesting. The Russian troops sitting in Transnistria right now, they're not elite units. They're local militias holding Russian passports. And Ukrainian intelligence knows something critical about them. Their combat motivation has dropped to zero. These soldiers don't want a massive war. They want to drop their weapons and go home. For Putin, the situation was already turning into a complete fiasco. Now add Ukraine's defense shield to that equation. Due to the massive air defense umbrella established by Kiev and Moldova's complete closure of its airspace, not a single military round can enter the region. In other words, the shield built by Kiev catches the Russian military dagger aimed at Moldova's chest right in midair. The Russian generals who used to create government crises with a single phone call are now virtually trapped, unable to even deliver supplies to their own troops. They're besieged, logistically cut off, hostage. Then there's the ammunition depot in Transnistria. 22,000 tons sounds terrifying. But here's the reality. The vast majority of that ammunition consists of quarter-century-old rusted Soviet relics that have long exceeded their shelf life. Russia's biggest military asset has turned into a giant time bomb that could self-destruct at any moment. Moscow's plans to suddenly attack Moldova or overthrow the government using this armed force, they crash into Ukraine's defense shield and stop cold. Now, this matters for something much bigger than just military tactics, because while Ukraine was building this shield, something else was happening in the region. Moldova's parliament changed its internal rules. They restricted the influence of Russian. They delivered a very clear message to Putin. Romanian became the sole working language in plenary sessions despite fierce opposition and walkouts. This wasn't bureaucratic. This was the biggest cultural independence cry against decades of Russian assimilation policies. The desperate walkout by pro-Russian parties was the clearest picture of Moscow's political collapse in the region. This created a shockwave in the Kremlin. Lavrov's threats from months ago that unification would destroy Moldova's statehood now sound like empty slogans, because with Ukraine's defense line on the Transnistria border, Moldova can feel something it hasn't felt in years: safety, security, partnership with a battle-hardened military ally. Romania saw this moment and didn't hesitate. Bucharest is integrating infrastructure projects with Moldova at an unprecedented pace. Moldova's electricity grid is no longer dependent on Russian natural gas and blackmail. It's now directly connected to the European Union's secure energy lines. The impenetrable wall Ukraine built is giving both countries the confidence to take steps away from Moscow. They're forming a tight bloc against any possible Russian aggression. Even the European Union accelerated Moldova's accession negotiations at unprecedented speed. The EU High Representative visited Chisinau and said directly, "We must move fast." Brussels knows the Transnistria problem, which has been a shackle for years, is no longer an obstacle. It's a controlled detail. The old Soviet sphere of influence is irreversibly fragmenting. Pro-Russian enclaves that Moscow carefully created for decades are drowning under the rising wave of European integration. But the real prize here, the real strategic victory, it's Odessa, the golden keys of the Black Sea. This has been Putin's greatest obsession for centuries. Odessa is the shining jewel at the center of that obsession. The security of that city lies at the very heart of Ukraine's existential struggle and economic independence on the global stage. Putin's greatest dream was to capture Odessa and present it as the coronation ceremony of the invasion. Transnistria was the perfect springboard to encircle the port from the west and completely sever Ukraine's connection to the Black Sea. Moscow planned a deadly pincer operation. Launch Marines from Crimea while sending armored units from Transnistria. Put Odessa in a deadly vice. If that had succeeded, Ukraine's economy collapses. Millions of tons of grain rots. The global food supply chain gets paralyzed. Moscow gains the power to blackmail the entire world using hunger as a weapon. If Odessa had fallen, the Romanian coast comes directly within range of Russian warships. NATO's southern flank becomes defenseless. Ukraine's jugular vein in global grain trade and energy transit routes gets cut. This was the plan. This was real. But Ukraine shattered it. Not just the military strategy, the invincible psychology of the Russian Navy in the Black Sea has been sunk into the waters of that strategic sea. With the land border fully secured, the Ukrainian army can direct its attention to the main fronts and the sea. Dragon's teeth and anti-tank ditches are ready to end any possible Russian armored assault before the order to move is even given. Kiev wants to suffocate every hybrid attack, sabotage, and provocation attempt targeting Odessa right at the 0 point of the border. The Russian forces in Transnistria have turned from an offensive force into a besieged, cut-off, hostage army. They're not threatening Odessa anymore. They're just trying to survive in isolated bases. The security of the Black Sea is now guaranteed directly by Ukraine's unshakable determination on this borderline. Having secured its borders, Ukraine can now deploy autonomous naval systems into the Black Sea depths. Advanced naval drones are leaving Odessa port, trapping and hunting Russian warships in their own harbors. This autonomous warfare revolution, increasing in intensity every day, is turning Russia's century-old naval legend into rusted metal. All of this reveals how heavy a price Putin is actually paying. The deep European strategy he meticulously crafted for years, pouring in billions of rubles, is collapsing like a house of cards. Ukraine is no longer just a victim defending its territory. It's a candidate superpower that determines balances in Europe and on the global stage. European capitals now see Kiev directly at the head of the table when determining regional security policies. In the Eastern Bloc, dynamics and borders are no longer drawn in the Kremlin's map rooms. Decisions are shaped by the collective mind of the Western Bloc, NATO's support, and Kiev's steel will. Moscow's old domineering diplomacy is shattering against the cold steel of Ukrainian trenches. Putin's vision of seizing the Black Sea is doomed to be smashed to pieces at the bottom of these multi-layered ditches. By losing his absolute influence in Transnistria, Putin is permanently losing his fearsome, invincible dictator image across Europe. Romania and Moldova can now find the courage to openly confront the Russian threat instead of submitting to it. Russia's legendary army and supposedly impenetrable intelligence network are melting away in the ditches Ukraine built. As the Transnistria legend collapses, Russia's hybrid warfare capacity and blackmail power in Europe are crumbling. The extraordinary military resistance shown by Ukraine is instilling unprecedented spirit of resistance in other small states in the region. From Gagauzia to Transnistria, the old Soviet sphere is irreversibly fragmenting. Europe's new security architecture is being rebuilt right here in these trenches in the hands of Ukrainian soldiers protecting Odessa. As history is being rewritten before our eyes, Russia has been pushed into the position of an isolated spectator on the geopolitical table. A leader who set out to expand his borders with imperial dreams is now helplessly watching his own troops trapped in his backyard. This silent but deadly shield on the Transnistria border is bringing the definitive end to a century-old imperial dream. While protecting Odessa, Ukraine has proven to the whole world that it's protecting the entire southern flank of Europe from possible invasion. This historic proof is making Ukraine not just a regional actor, but an indispensable cornerstone of European defense. As Moldova and Romania take decisive steps toward their historic unification goal, they now have an unbreakable Ukrainian wall behind them. On this vast geopolitical chessboard, two striking questions remain. Cornered with his military presence in Transnistria effectively taken hostage and his prestige shaken, what kind of response might Putin resort to in the Black Sea in response to this strategic disaster? And can Ukraine's massive shield accelerate the Moldova-Romania unification and permanently change the map of Europe much earlier than we expected? That's the question that matters right now.